chose this because I've always heard the story about Samson, long hair, Delilah fooled him, cut his hair off, Philistines took him, and then he pushed the pillars down and killed a bunch of Philistines. And I never really had the story put in context, so that's what I'm going to do. And I want to start with the Israelites. Way back when they got out of Egypt, they were headed for the Promised Land, and they got there, and they chickened out. And I want to read that right now, Numbers 13:25. If you want to follow along, I'm going to do a lot of reading today. Because what I'm going to be talking about is stories about the Israelites. It's really what this is. And try to read kind of fast because I know that you can listen faster than I can read. Numbers 13:25. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They had sent spies into Canaan to check things out. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites, Jebusites, and the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people. So they're saying, hey, there's really big people there, and this is really bad. So Caleb stands up and he says, hey, wait a minute. And he says, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. So this one guy stands up and says, hey, all you negative Nancy's out there, we've got, God led us out of Egypt, performed all the miracles. Remember the Passover? They had to put the blood of lambs over the door, and all the Egyptian firstborn were killed. And then all the plagues. And they walked across the Red Sea, and the sea caved in on their enemies. And they escaped. They were led by Moses. All these miracles happened, and now they get to where they're supposed to go. And they said, well, this is too scary. We can't do this. And so, but the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak came from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. That night, all the people of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in the desert. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to be back in Egypt? So, can you believe that? They did all those things. God helped them through all those. God made water come out of rocks. He sent them a manna to eat. And now they get there and they say, well, this is going to be too hard, and we can't do it. And so goes the story of the Israelites. In the book of Judges, well, and after that they wandered in the desert for 40 years. And so the book of Judges is a continuation of that story. They made it, they finally went back and made it into the land of Canaan, and I always thought, well, they made it the second time. Everything is good. But if you read the book of Judges, they start making a mess out of everything all over again. And the book of Judges is about all the men, all the leaders that God sent them to rescue them from the Philistines and all their other enemies that God kept letting them be conquered by these other people. Even though they were in the Promised Land, after all those things that they went through, I can't believe that they did this. And so I want to read there. I thought, well, I need to do an introduction to the book of Judges. And luckily, in the first part of Judges, in Judges 2:16 to 19, If you want to read that with me, there's a perfect introduction to the book. It's Judges 2:16 to 19. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshipped them. Unlike their fathers, they quickly turned from the way in which their fathers had walked, the way of obedience to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived. For the Lord had compassion on them as they groaned under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their fathers, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. So I can't believe this. No matter how many times the Jews kept falling back into evil ways and immorality, God would send another leader to save them. And he did it over and over and over. And so Samson is one of those judges. He's one of those leaders. And the beginning, we all know the basic story of Samson, so I'm going to kind of skip over the whole part of Delilah and all that. And this is the introduction. This is what happened with Samson's parents. And this is in Judges 13. I'm going to read that whole chapter. It goes really quickly. It reads like a Ted Dekker novel or something. It's a good story. So this is Judges 13. And the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. So again, they're in the land of Canaan, and they're oppressed by the Philistines. And they had it made the whole time, but they don't follow God's commandments. A certain man named Zorah, named Manoah, from the clan of the Danites, had a wife who was sterile and remained childless. So Manoah is Samson's father. And it never mentions the name of Samson's mother. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are sterile and childless, but you are going to conceive and have a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean, because you will conceive and give birth to a son. No razor may be used on his head, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, set apart to God from birth. And he will begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines." So that's God's job for Samson. It's right there. To begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. He never accomplishes that. This is just the beginning of that deliverance. Then the woman went over to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name, but he said to me, 'You will conceive and give birth to a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazarite of God from birth until the day of his death.' Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, 'O Lord, I beg you, let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born.' God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field. But her husband Manoah was not with her. The woman hurried to her husband, 'He's here, the man who appeared to me the other day.' Manoah got up and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said, 'Are you the one who talked to my wife?' 'I am,' he said. So Manoah asked him, 'When your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule for the boy's life and work?' The angel of the Lord answered, 'Your wife must do all that I have told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, nor drink any wine or other fermented drink, nor eat anything unclean. She must do everything I commanded her.' Manoah said to the angel of the Lord," now Manoah still doesn't know that this is an angel, "We would like you to stay until we prepare a young goat for you." The angel of the Lord replied, "Even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord." Manoah did not realize that it was an angel of the Lord. Then Manoah inquired of the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, so that we may honor you when your word comes true?" true. He replied, "Why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding." See, he's an angel. It's beyond what Manoah would understand. Then Manoah took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended into the flame. So this was an awesome thing to see. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that this was an angel of the Lord. "We are doomed to die," he said to his wife. "We have seen God." See, I can picture that. Me and Angie there, I'd be saying, "Angie, this is really bad." But his wife answered, "If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from our hands, nor shown us all these things, or now told us this." The woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. That's the greatest beginning to a story. It sounds like a fairy tale. Everything is going perfect. Their son is born. God didn't kill Noah and his wife for having seen the angel. I mean, everything is the way it's supposed to be. And remember the Nazarite vow. There's three things. You can't have anything with grapes in it, and you can't cut his hair, and he's not to touch any dead bodies. So now the story of Samson starts. And this is where we see how Samson kind of starts making a mess out of things. And, can you imagine having a son who was supposed to do these great things, and then he starts doing things he's not supposed to do? And I would be telling Angie, this is bad. We did something wrong, and God's going to kill us now. So the things our son is doing. But let's start reading the story of Samson here. I'm going to read chapter 14, verses 1 through 4. "So Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, 'I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now go and get her for me as my wife.'" So this is a Philistine woman. Aren't there any Jewish women you would rather be with? His father and mother replied, "Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me. She's the right one for me." His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines. For at that time they were ruling over Israel. So even in Samson's disobedience to his parents said, "Don't do that. It's going to end badly." And Samson actually, I thought about this morning. I added this to my notes. They already had the 10 Commandments. And so, whatever happened to honor your father and your mother? So Samson broke one of the 10 Commandments by not listening to his mother and father. And things would have been a lot different if he had found a nice Jewish girl to marry. And so Samson chased after this Philistine woman, and this is where he goes in to visit her. He visited her once, and now he's going back to visit her again. And on the first trip down, that's when he killed the lion with his hands. And the only time he was strong was when God allowed him to be. The Spirit would come over him, and he was actually, I can't remember where I read it, but he wasn't Hulk Hogan. He was just more of a normal-sized guy like any of us in here. So he wasn't as big as Mark Kemper, probably. Anyway, he's just a normal-sized guy, and so he would exhibit these great feats of strength. And he killed a lion with his hands. On the second trip to visit his wife, when he was on the way to marry her, this is verse 8. Sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass that he'd killed on the first visit. In it was a swarm of bees and some honey, which he scooped out with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they ate it too. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the lion's carcass. So right there, he violated a rule of the Nazarite vow. He'd gone near that dead carcass. And so he just keeps on doing things he's not supposed to do. And we go to verse 14, chapter 14, verse 12. And this is where he tells the Philistines his riddle. Let me tell you a riddle. There was a bunch of Philistines came to see what was going on with the Samson guy and what they could do about him. And he said, let me tell you a riddle. In verse 12, Samson said to them, if you can give me the answer within the 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Now back then that was probably a lot because they didn't have all the machinery we have to make all this. Everything was done by hand. So this was a big bet. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Tell us your riddle, they said. Let's hear it. And he replied, out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. So his riddle was about the lion and the honey. But how would these Philistines know about that? For 3 days, they could not give the answer. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to rob us? So now, Samson puts his wife in the middle of this between the Philistines and himself. She's in a no-win situation. So you gotta go back to, if you'd have married a Jewish girl, this wouldn't be a problem. Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, you hate me, you don't really love me. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. I haven't even explained it to my father or mother, he replied. So why should I explain it to you? I can't believe he's talking to his wife. She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. So now she spoils the riddle because she doesn't want to get burned to death, obviously. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? So they had the answer to the riddle. And Samson said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Now, I wanted to have some fun with that, and ultimately Angie said, so you're calling me a heifer? And so I would not adopt this saying here in today's society. But, you know, a heifer, when I moved to Clayton, one of the first questions I asked Angie's dad, now, what exactly is a heifer? And because I didn't know. And for anybody that doesn't know, a heifer is a bovine, a female bovine who never has had a baby. So after they have a baby, then you call them a cow. So this was really a reference to his wife never giving birth, I assume. So let's move on. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 other men, stripped them of their belongings, and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. So he went and beat up a bunch of guys, took their stuff, and used it for payment for the bet he lost. Burning with anger, he went up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to the friend who had attended him at his wedding. So it turns out that Samson's wife it says who had attended him at his wedding. I read in the study notes in my Bible that was his best man at his wedding. And so you can imagine now Samson is very angry about this, because now it sounds like he did love her and he married her, and now she's been given to his best man. And I would question who was his best man, and I would be afraid to be Samson's best man and take his wife. So in chapter 15, 15 to 20, or 15, 1 to 8, this is when he goes and goes to his wife. Later on, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, I'm going to my wife's room. So after the whole riddle thing, him and his wife were kind of split up over that, I imagine. So he goes to where his wife lives. But her father would not let him go see his wife. I was so sure you thoroughly hated her, he said, that I gave her to your friend. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. So now her father is trying to buy him off with his other daughter. And Samson said to them, this time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them. So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. So this is this is more of a boyish prank. It sounds like to me anyway. Is this really what God wants him to do? Is burn all their crops? And is this how he is to take vengeance on the Philistines? But God, I guess God is using his revenge to torment their enemies in the end. When the Philistines asked who did this, they were told, Samson the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his friend. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. So now the Philistines take revenge on Samson by ultimately doing what they had threatened her with when she wouldn't tell them the answer to the riddle. So she ended up dying anyway, even though she was loyal to them with the answer to the riddle. So the Philistines killed Samson's wife. Samson said to them, since you have acted like this, I won't stop until I get revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Edom. So God is using Samson to torment the Philistines, even though Samson is doing a bunch of things that he's not supposed to be doing. Now if we go down to verse 15 in chapter 15. This is where Samson kills 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. So he's out to get revenge. Then Samson said, with the donkey's jawbone I have made donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone I have killed 1,000 men. Think of Samson that married a Jewish woman and put together an army for Israel. Think of the army he could have put together. Man, if I was going to join an army, I would want Samson as my leader. He could have led him into battle. He could have done so much for the Israelites if he wouldn't have done things his way. He could have been such a great warrior. The whole story would have been different. It would have been a great story to tell instead of a story of Samson's ultimate failures. But even in his failures, God used all those to, remember back at the beginning, to begin the deliverance from the Philistines. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramnath-Lehi. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord. And he says, now you're going to let me die of thirst, and God gave him water. And then we go to the end, and ultimately Samson dies. They chain him to the big pillars, and he pushes the pillars down and kills all the Philistines. There at the gathering they were at, and they tied him up there and they were making fun of him. And this is the great Samson. And so that's the story. I skipped over Delilah because we all know that she tricked him into cutting off his hair, and that's how the Philistines took him. And it saddens me to see that he could have been such this great leader, and because of his selfish ways, he ended up killing himself and a bunch of Philistines. But God could have used him in so much. He could have done so much more. And so, ultimately, I have to ask myself, what foolishness in my life do I engage in that hinders the power of the Holy Spirit in my life? What mistakes do I make? What things am I obedient with as far as my relationship with Jesus? And how much more effective could I be? How much more of a warrior could I be for Jesus outside of my selfish ways and disobedience? And there's one other thing I thought was interesting was you haven't, look up the rulings that the Supreme Court made on gay marriage just last week. And you'll see that we are in a decline ourselves. And so I've got to ask myself, how am I going to live my life despite the rise and fall of the United States? And as I read back, this shouldn't surprise me. I should be able to, I ask myself, I read all these stories, and then why am I surprised that things are happening that are happening today? And so how, you know, every day I ask myself, how should I live my life? And I have a story. Have you guys heard of Martin Treptow? I was going to bet Mark might have heard of Treptow. This is a brief story I'll read real quick. Martin August Treptow was a barber from Cherokee, Iowa. Enlisting in the National Guard during World War I, his unit was called up, and Treptow found himself in the 168th Infantry. July 30th, 1918 was a hard day for the division. Participating in the Second Battle of the Marne, which stopped the last major German offensive of the war and saved Paris from capture, the division was attempting to take a hill. I'll skip through some of this. He was trying to run a message from one platoon to another, and he was killed in the process. As his personal effects were being gathered up, this was found in the fly relief of the diary he kept. So this was a soldier in World War I, and this is what he wrote. America must win this war. And that's what's important here is what I'm reading next. I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost, as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. And I think if I treat every day, everything I do as if everything depends on me, if I live my life that way, how much harder will I try? And obviously I'm not so proud as to say that everything depends on me. Like community church would go on fine without me. But if everything I do, I put that effort as if I think in my mind, I have to do this for Plain Community Church or for my country, and live my life as if the whole struggle depends on me. Let's pray. Dear Father, thank you for the story of Samson. Thank you for creating Samson the way you did. Thank you for giving us free will. And thank you for using us despite our free will and our disobedience.